Welcome back to Mama Lotties. Today I have 3 scrumptious recipes for you. The first is a very easy starter. It's grilled stuffed mushrooms. The second is a Mama favorite. It's a guisada with carne, you know, that meat stew that everybody loves, and it's very, very wholesome and very, very cozy for the winter. And for dessert, I have a Jewish traditional recipe. It's Bienmesabe, and that is almond based with liqueur, topped with some meringue, and it's going to be absolutely lovely. So join me next and we'll get started. So we're going to start off today with our mushroom starters, and for that we're going to need some portobello mushrooms, some cream cheese, some nice taquitos of jamon and garlic. It's going to be very simple. We're going to mix everything together and just put it in the oven and grill it. So we're going to start off by taking off the stems or the stalks of these mushrooms. You can just sort of rip them out, and you can take off the skin from the outside of those mushrooms. They should easily peel, but if you're having trouble you can use a knife and it'll give you a bit of a helping hand to peel that back. So once we're done peeling our mushrooms, we're going to pass this straight onto our baking tray. Then we'll prepare our stuffing, pass that into our mushrooms and plonk that straight in the oven under the grill at 180 degrees for about 30 minutes, but we'll keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't burn. So we've prepared our mushrooms, they're all peeled and laid out. It's time to do our stuffing. So I've got some cream cheese. You can get some very simple cream cheese here. I'm going to get some taquitos of jamon, you know, some jamon serrano chunks. I'm going to add that to the cream cheese. So now we're going to add some pepper to this, and we can season it. I mean, you can season this however you want. You can add some coriander, you can add some chives. The stuffing is adaptable, so you can make the stuffing to your liking. You can add rice, you can add meat, so like I said, you can add nuts, so anything you want to make with the stuffing, it's up to you. So I'm going to add some garlic as well, because I like garlic. So we're going to get 1 garlic and just chop it down very finely, because we don't want to get a big chunk of garlic in our mouth when we're biting into this. So today I'm going to go for more of the traditional sort of mushroom stuffing with the cheese, some ham and some garlic, so just keep it quite simple and easy today. But you can get as adventurous as you like with this. So once we've added in all those ingredients in there, I'm just going to give it a good mix to make sure that it's all sort of dispersed evenly in there. I want to mix it all together. And sometimes the more you mix as well, the runnier it's going to be, so it's a bit easier as well to then pass it into your mushrooms. So we've mixed this in here. I'm going to just get some of the mixture, and you can use another spoon to give you a hand with this, so you can just pass it into the mushrooms, sort of squish it down here. So like I said here, just squish it down to try and get it inside. So we're going to finish stuffing the rest of our mushrooms, and then we're just going to finish it by topping it up with a bit of cheese so it melts all nicely, and a bit of a drizzle of olive oil to give it that extra bit of touch of flavour and help it so it doesn't stick and doesn't burn too much in the oven whilst it's grilling. So our mushrooms are all full of our cream cheese. So it's ready now to top up with our cheese. So we're gonna sprinkle this on top and just be generous. It doesn't matter if it falls off and makes a bit of a mess in your pan. You can just scrape it off later. So just before we put this in the oven, I'm gonna give it a nice drizzle of olive oil and just coat it on top. Give it that extra Mediterranean flavor that we love. Give it that flavor of olives as well. There we go. So now we're just gonna stick it in the oven for about 30 minutes under a grill at 180 degrees until the cheese is melted, it goes golden, nice and crisp on the top, and the mushrooms soften. So we'll just keep an eye on it. So these have been in there for about half an hour now, and you can see the cheese is nice and golden and the mushrooms are softer. Everything has been grilled and this is going to be delicious. So let's transfer this onto our plate. Now these are great for like very casual dinner parties if you want something to snack on just before you serve dinner to your guests. Nice little event that you can have. So as you can see, the mushrooms are all done here. They're all nice and soft. The cheese is golden. Everything's sort of melted and the flavors have really combined. And I can smell that garlic and that cheesiness. It's very strong. So I'm just gonna have one now. So there, look, that's it. It's nice and messy to eat. So good. Now the cheese is really creamy. That saltiness from the ham is really powerful in here and it's very, very nice, which is why we don't add any extra salt when we're cooking it. But I think this is a perfect starter. So I'm gonna finish this off and next we'll do our carne guisada, so don't go away. So it's time for our main course now, and it's going to be a very traditional mama special of carne guisada, okay? So we're going to start with the refrito, which is the base to any sort of traditional, typical recipe that we do here in the Mediterranean. So it's tomatoes, garlic, and onions, all chopped up very finely and fried, and that's just going to sort of make that base of the sauce. It's going to nice and soften up, it's going to tenderize, and it's going to be the sort of richness that this dish is going to have. So we're going to start off with our tomatoes. So 4 tomatoes for this dish. It's going to be a big dish. So we're just going to chop the ends off. We don't need sort of those stemmy bits. Cut that off. If you have time, you can sort of poach these and peel the skin off or just chop the skin off. But I just like to add it there and keep that extra texture. So just chop them down nice and fine. Nice into small, tiny diced pieces. Because the smaller you make it, then it's easier to, or quicker for it to cook. So before I add this into the pan, we're just going to drizzle a nice generous amount of olive oil in there. I did say generous. And for the time being, just keep on cutting your tomatoes until you have all 4 of them chopped up and in your pot. So if you're not used to making carne guisada, it's a little bit time consuming when it's cooking, so I can suggest that if you have a pressure cooker, take it out of your cupboard and put it to cook because you're going to cook this in half the time, okay? So this is a very homely, very traditional recipe. Mama makes it typically in the winter or in the autumn when it's all cold outside, so you can be all cozy inside. The trick is to get that meat nice and tender when you're cooking it. So the longer you stew it, the better, okay? The slower and longer you do it, the better it's gonna be. But that's gonna be, the flavors are gonna combine really nicely when we add in the saffron to give that color, when we add in the rest of our ingredients and the rest of the vegetables, which is great because this is a very sort of nutrient-rich dish. And now the final bit to the refrito, which is the garlic. And that's going to give this all the fragrance and taste to the sauce. And you can already smell that tomato, that garlic sort of already mixing together, and the onions, that sweetness of the onions starting to come out of this dish as it's cooking away. And we're going to just season it with a bit of salt in here to help those flavors really come out of that tomato and those onions and everything. And a little crushing of black pepper in here. I want to make sure that whilst this is cooking, or at least I like to, is stir it because I want to break down that tomato whilst it's cooking. It's reducing into a sauce. And you want to just make it sort of into like a little pasty tomato sauce. So what we're going to add to this are 2 carrots, which I've already peeled. We're just going to chop the ends off. Okay, we don't need that stalky bit at the end. And then we're going to just slice them. And I like to slice these sort of sideways to keep them a bit large, so that when we're eating it, we can see the carrots and we can see what we're eating, what we're enjoying. So I'm going to say with 3 potatoes, what I like to do is make sure you wash it and cut off any sort of brown bits or any bits that you see, and then just cut them down, add it straight to the pot as well. But these we want to leave into like sort of cubes, but small cubes, so that when we're eating them, you can just get a forkful of patatas with everything. So now that we've added our vegetables in there, we're going to finish it off with the green beans. Now you can get fresh green beans and cut them down, or just frozen ones which are already nice and diced for us. And just put about a handful or so in there. So we add some color as well, which is nice. And finally, we'll top it up with our meat. So the slower you cook it, the better it's going to be, because it's going to be nice and tender, it's going to go really soft, and it's going to be very, very juicy and flavor all this stew for us, okay? So about 500 grams in there. Got all the meat. Okay. We're going to top it up with water, cover all the ingredients, add in our seasoning, which is bay leaf. So 2 bay leaves into the pot. So we're going to add saffron. We're going to get fresh herb saffron and powdered saffron in there. That's going to give this a lot of color and that richness, and we're going to just top it up with a little bit of olive oil in here for that extra flavor. Okay, now just to top it off, because we've added all these ingredients in there, we're going to add in a bit of salt, which we can check and taste once this starts to cook. And we're going to finish it off with a bit of water on top, so that hot boiled water from the kettle, we're just going to top it up and cover all the ingredients. And you can already see that that saffron is changing the color into yellow, so that it's going to really give this the typical Guisada nice stew coloring. So it's been here for about 40 minutes to an hour. We're just going to let this sit for a couple of minutes so that all this water and all the juices get soaked up by the potatoes and the other ingredients in here. And then just serve it, because it's going to be very, very hot. So we're going to just serve this into a bowl. So the meat is really nice and tender, the potatoes are nice and soft. So everything should thicken up nicely. And you can see here that you can see all the carrots, all the green beans. Give it a nice bit of color as well in here from the saffron, which has made everything go nice and orange, okay? So like I said, nice and tender, and the longer you leave it, the more tender that the meat's gonna get, and the more the flavors are gonna combine together. So we're just gonna get a bit of everything. Yeah, and let it cool down because this is tobacco. So that's very, very nice and heartwarming and cozy, and this is perfect for a cold winter's day when you're stuck at home and you just want something to make you feel all cuddly inside. This is perfect, and it really reminds me of a typical mama dish. So I'm going to finish this off, and now we're going to do something sweet, which is a Bienmesabe. So it's an almond-based custard dessert, topped up with meringue and a touch of cinnamon for that warm winter flavour. So let's get started. It's dessert time, and we're going to make a Bienmesabe. Now, Bienmesabe, like I said before, it's a custard dish topped with meringue, but we're going to add almond liqueur to it to give it extra punch of almond. Okay, the original recipe called for whiskey, so if you want to add a shot of whiskey to it, by all means go ahead. But I prefer adding some almond liqueur to it just because it balances with the rest of the ingredients. So we're going to start by making a syrup. So we're going to get sugar, about 200 grams or so, and some hot water, which we're going to boil together until it thickens and turns into a syrup. So just stir this together, let the sugar and the water dissolve and combine until it's all disappeared and it's all sort of thickens up, and you'll see it go a bit slightly more gloopy. So then we're going to crush some lady fingers, okay, some boudoir biscuits. Now I'm going to get here like 3 or 4 pieces and just crush it down, because this is going to be the base of the dessert. Now what we're going to do is mix half of that syrup in with this and a shot of the almond liqueur. So that's going to really soften the biscuit up and make it sort of more manageable to put as the base of our dish. So this was given to me by my friend Tracy Boyer, who makes it during Passover, so the traditional Jewish holidays, or similar to the Christian Easter, for the same period of time. We can adapt this to make it your own, and if you want to make it the traditional way, just make sure that everything is kosher. So this is boiled away. I'm going to just take it off the heat and let it cool down a bit first, but we're going to add this in, or half of this in, with our biscuits, and use the other half to mix with our egg yolks and make our custard for this. Okay, so we're going to stir it in. You'll see that the biscuits go all soft and mushy, which is going to be great for the base of it. And we're going to add in now the almond liqueur in here. So just stir it until you have like a nice paste, which we're going to use, and you can already smell instantly with the heat that strong almond smell from the liqueur. So we're going to start layering this out whilst we make the rest of the dish so that it can cool down in the meantime. So we're going to get, I'm going to get 2 large wine glasses, but you can really use anything you want, and just layer it at the bottom here. If you want to see the layers, use a glass container. If you're not too bothered, you can use sort of a nice ramekin dish to serve it in. So we're going to leave these to one side to let them cool down, and we'll prepare the custard in the meantime. So it's time to separate the eggs now to prepare the custard. So we're going to get our eggs, separate them and mix them with ground almonds. So just crack them and pass them from one shell to another. So quite easy. But the egg whites you're going to keep separate because we're going to use this for our meringue later. So in here with our syrup, what's left after mixing it with the sort of boudoir biscuit base, we're going to add in ground almonds in there and stir it together, let that thicken up, and we're going to add in our egg yolks and just pour them in. Now let this heat up, let it mix together and turn into a custard, okay? So we don't want to put the heat too high. So if you made a custard from scratch before, you know that when you put it all together in the pot, you have to stir it constantly so that the egg doesn't scramble and doesn't cook, and let the water sort of reduce so it thickens. And once it starts to thicken and it starts to change color, so go very sort of yellow, you'll see that it's ready, okay? So once this thickens up, let it cool down a little bit, and we're gonna pour it into our containers, okay? We're gonna make the second layer. Now what's important is that once we pour it and everything's in the container, let it cool down, let it thicken whilst you make the meringue, because you don't want the heat from this to start cooking the meringue when you put it on top. So now that we've poured it and we've got all our layers in there, it's slightly colder. I'm going to shove it in the fridge for a bit whilst I make the meringue to just let it cool down a lot faster and give it a bit of cold blast. So whilst everything's in the fridge getting nice and cold, it's time to make the meringue. So you've got all the egg whites from the 4 eggs that we used before. Pour them into a bowl. Make sure that the bowl is clean, that's important. And now we'll whisk everything. So once you see peaks start to form, we'll add our lemon. So we'll add a squeeze of lemon in here. Just make sure you don't get any of the pips inside. So put that in here. And then as we continue sort of combining this and whisking it, we're gonna pour in some sugar until you see that it goes really shiny, sleek and fluffy, okay? And once it completely stays all nice and pointy and firm, it's time to serve. So once you can see that you have your peaks and it's really soft and fluffy and smooth, just stop whisking. The thing you've got to be careful with this is that if you over whisk it and you lose those peaks, you're not going to get it back and you're going to have to start all over again. So now we'll take our ingredients out of the fridge and add our final layer of meringue. So now this can be the fun, messy bit. You can use a piping bag if you want to, or just get a spoon and just pour it in here. Now the meringue is up to you on how much meringue you want and how much you love meringue. Okay? You can make it as decorative as you want, you can be as dainty as you like, or you can be a bit cateto and just pour it in here. And now for the toquecito, it's a nice sprinkling of cinnamon on top, which is gonna really add some nice winter smells and flavor to this. As if it's not already enough with all that almond that we have inside. So as you can see, we have all our different layers: meringue, almond custard, biscuit with almond liqueur, and topped up with that warm, fragrant cinnamon. So it's time to give it a taste. Try and get as many layers as we can here. So let's give this a try. Delicious. That's delicious. The almond liqueur really gives a nice punch at the end, because you can taste the almond from the custard, so it's nice and rich and sweet, but then you get that punch from the almond liqueur at the back, so it just sets in nicely. That is a very rich but very delicious dessert, and you can make the meringue even sweeter by adding more sugar as you mix it. I think this is a winner for dessert. So thank you for joining me this week. I'll see you next week with 3 more recipes. I hope you had fun, and all the recipes are on mamalotties.com, so I'll see you very, very soon. You can check out these tasty recipes and more by picking up a Mama Lotties cookbook or visiting mamalotties.com.